We have an incredible build that takes ages to actually get hold of, and even though I've titled this video 250% extra damage, you can see numbers from headshots that are 400% extra. That is comparing to your base damage stat. This build is going to work with all weapons, but it's going to take a long time to actually grind for the gear, get the right gear together. Luckily enough, I had a lot of the things I needed in my stash, and there's a few things that are going to be tough to actually get hold of. But if we jump into the build, I'm running the crossbow specialization because I've set my build up for an AR. If you want to set it up for a rifle, then just switch out the specialization for sharpshooter. SMGs and LMGs, you just got to change up to demolitionist. But I run the SOCOM MK16 at the moment because I barely find ARs, and if I do, they're normally not any better than this. I would like to have maybe a P416 or a Police M4 because of the fire rate. But when you're picking your weapon, you want to make sure it's got the talent optimist. Weapon damage is increased by 3% for every 10% ammo missing from the magazine. So let's just say the final, because it's a 40 round mag, the final 20 rounds are going to have a 15% damage boost. We're only going to put it like that because obviously with the final 4 bullets you can get 27% boost because 90% is missing. But chances are you're not going to drop an enemy unless they're clean headshots within the last 4 rounds. So there's 15% of the damage just from that talent. One thing to note with this, you'll see on the left hand side, like gear score doesn't matter, that's completely irrelevant for this build. But red, which is your offensive, has to be 3 or less. You cannot have it any more than 3 or this won't work. Blue and yellow have to be 7 or more. It's really hard to get that to work, but once you do, you're basically going to be a nuke. You just run in, destroy everything. The pistol doesn't have to have anything, like you can use double barrel sawn-off or whatever you want to use. But the talent I'm going to go with on this is stop, drop and roll, just because of the amount of bleed you get from warhounds and the amount of burning you get. One of the suiciders, like the bombers, you could have an incendiary thrown at you by a grenadier, like anything can happen. Burning seems to happen a lot, so I've gone with stop, drop and roll. I can literally just roll and get rid of that status effect. Then going into the mask, I've gone with centered as my talent. You can use spotter if you want, which will increase the damage even further, but I've heard in a couple of videos it doesn't quite work like that, like the pulsing doesn't seem to have an effect when this build's going, or something like that. I can't remember what it was. So I've gone with centered because if you get a headshot kill, you're immune to status effect for 10 seconds. Not sure how often that can actually occur, but it seems to help out. Sometimes if there's a grenade coming at me that's going to set me on fire, it will pop up saying immune. Or if there's shock, EMPs or anything like that. Then I have a utility mod. I've just chucked any mods on as long as my red, blue and yellow are the correct numbers. I could maybe get extra damage if I had 2 more reds, but as I said, like this build can be changed up so much. It's just about getting the base gear and then you can carry on improving. The bag, brand sets don't matter at all on this build, I forgot to mention them. Go with whatever you want as long as you have the brand set that's going to boost the damage for your gun. Because I'm running an AR, I've had to go with Fenris Group AB. But the bag, make sure you have on the ropes. Weapon damage is increased by 25% while all skills are on cooldown. Then I've recaled hard hitting onto this so that I've got boosted damage to elites. And then luckily enough I got a utility mod to put in the mod part of the bag. The third piece of gear is the chest. I actually have 2 lots of Fenris Group in my build. And this is 100% necessary. You need to have this talent, Unstoppable Force. Killing an enemy grants 2% weapon damage for every 10,000 max armor. You can see on the left hand side, I'm just short of 224,000 armor. So that means when I kill an enemy, for the next, I don't know how long it lasts, but let's just say it's like a permanent thing, I've got 44% extra weapon damage. That talent alone adds a hell of a lot of damage, makes you so much stronger in terms of damage output, it's just mental. So Unstoppable Force is one that you're going to have to go for on this build. Like, that's one of the most important things to me. Then I've got hard hitting as well and defensive protocol. One of the attributes to go for on this, if you're lucky enough, is maybe instead of the health or instead of the skill power even, I would try and get a weapon damage stat, just because they can go quite high, and if you can boost the damage of your weapons by another 8%, you're going to become a god. Like, heroic isn't going to matter to you. Then we have the gloves. I need to recal this. I haven't found anything with higher than 5% AR damage in a couple of days. Like, I've been working on this build for a long time now, and I just can't find anything at the moment. I've seen AR damage like 11 or 12%, but that was a long time ago, like back in World Tier 4, and I recaled it onto something else. So if you can get a really high AR damage attribute, make sure you use it, or whatever your gun's for. Like I've seen shotgun, LMG damage like 11-12%. Compensated is the talent you want for this. Weapon damage is increased by 15% when your crit hit chance is below 20%. Our crit hit chance on this build is 0%. We never ever get crits, just because it works to deal a lot more damage if you have no crit hit chance. Like you can go up to 20%, but with this build and the way it works, there's just no point going for it. Then we have the holster, and this was a godsend roll on ongoing directive. Just because I was running a normal piece, had some attributes and stuff that helped me out, I had to take it off because my utility wasn't going above 7. It was stuck on 6, sometimes 5. Luckily enough, this ongoing directive gives me a utility attribute, being the skill power, and it's got a double roll utility mod slot. So I can have 2 utility mods and the attribute. This holster alone gives me 3 points on my utility, so that's why I've got 8. Without this I would have 5. This build really wouldn't work. And with this build there always seems to be 1 spare slot. You can have whichever piece of gear you want in, but make sure your red is 3 or less, your blue and yellow are 7 or more. Then last but not least, we have the second piece of Fenris group, and that is my knee pads. You don't need anything specific on this, but I've got hard hitting luckily enough, and patience. Patience is still my favourite talent to have in this game. After being in cover for 3 seconds, armour repairs by 5% every 1 second. That is incredible. To have hardly any armour regen, and then you go to actually getting armour to regenerate whilst you're sat in cover. And with heroic and even sometimes challenging difficulty, you can't just run and gun like a crazy madman. You have to play tactically, you have to play strategically, take time like patience, as the talent says. You need to use the cover in this game. That's what the cover was made for. So make sure you're using cover. Try and get patience. I'm not sure of the other talents you can get rolled on a knee pad, but patience is amazing. It's helped me out of so many sticky situations. So that's pretty much all there is to the build. We've gone through the talents. We've gone through the points you need on offensive, defensive, and utility. Even getting stop, drop, and roll on the pistol. The skills we need to have, or you don't need to have them, you can mix them up. But I've gone with the cluster seeker mine. It deals damage, it's good, like it's helpful. And the chem launcher, they messed around with this in the last update. I thought you couldn't self-heal with it. I thought you literally press your right bumper, or whatever button it's assigned to, get it out and shoot it at the floor for yourself, or over to your teammates. Then looking into it, I saw you can double tap and it self-heals. This thing is going to be a lifesaver, a lot of the time. You have to be using your skills often to get this build to work. And if you can get a mod for it that boosts the ammo count, you can have 5 of these. You're going to be healing a lot. You're going to be getting all your health and armor back, where your armor is going to keep you in the fight longer. And one thing they've added in recently, if we quickly run down, the cluster seeker mine I'm using, because if I go with a drone, that doesn't go on cooldown straight away. Like until it actually gets destroyed, or until the times run out, then it goes on cooldown. So you could be waiting like 20 seconds for your extra damage to kick in. And also with the turret, that's the same thing. It doesn't go on cooldown until after it's been used. The seeker mine, as soon as it attacks an enemy, as soon as it like comes out, rolls towards an enemy, it goes on cooldown. So if I stand here, and we're going to put the difficulty on elite, so we get the damage to elites. And if we shoot at the enemy, 516,000 DPS, damage on the last hit, 66,300. If we reset that, we reload our gun, we put the cluster seeker mine down, and then if we hold our left bumper to get it to go on cooldown, and we self-heal twice, just so there's a cooldown, and then shoot, if we actually get our gun out, you'll see there, 75,000 last hit, and now we're further down in the mag. If I self-heal again, 80,000, like it increases because of optimist. The further you get into the mag, the more damage you deal. But that's why I'm going to say, I've put in the title 250%, and that's because that's what I'm very close to in terms of actually looking at your stats. But when you're actually in game and fighting enemies, you deal a lot more damage. I get headshots of like 92,000, 94,000. So by taking a look at my base damage on my gun, 18.8, let's just round that up to 19,000. Timesing that by 5, which is 400% added on. So you've got your base damage, then you've got 400%. That will put it up to 95,000. So we're pretty much almost dealing, when we're at the end of our mag, all our skills are on cooldown, we are pretty much getting like 400%, like 95,000 damage almost. The amount of damage this could do with a rifle is unbelievable. I haven't tried it, I'm not going to try it because I'm happy with my AR build. But if any of you ever decide to use this, and you go with a single shot rifle, please let me know the damage numbers, because I can't imagine it being any less than crazy. Taking a look at the stats quick, we're going to go and take down the named bosses just south of the White House in a minute, just so you can actually see this in proper gameplay. But taking a look, we've gone through all the talents of weapon and gear. You can see there, I've got 30% crit hit damage, but no chance, so that's completely irrelevant. 55% headshot, 30% AR damage bonus. Unfortunately, I don't have any all weapons damage bonus, and people have started posting videos of how to get blue mods, which are like generic mods. If you put them on your gear, each mod can boost your damage by like 5 or 6%. So there's a lot more depth to customizing this build. I just wanted to show you the basics to get you started, because you will be an absolute god. Like, you can't go wrong with this build. As long as you have it set up properly, you're going to deal ridiculously high damage numbers. I'm not sure how good it's going to be in PvP. I'm not a PvP player. This is just PvE for the time being. I might test it later on in PvP and see how it does. But we also have 45% damage to elites. You can get that a lot higher as well. There's, like, you can literally boost the damage numbers, the percentages you're getting with every single thing. But I mean, your percentages you see in your stats, like damage to elites, AR damage, all weapons damage, that can all be boosted even further than what I have. This build is very strong for me, and it's just mad knowing that it can be a lot stronger than I currently have it. So what we're going to do now is head out of the White House. We're going to run south. Don't forget when you're doing this to recal the stuff that you haven't already done. Like my gloves, is it? Yeah, once I find an attribute that's better than 5% AR damage, I will be recalibrating the gloves. Just make sure you've got everything boosted, recaled, like get it as high as you can, and sometimes you're going to have to be lucky with certain pieces of gear just because you need, with your attributes, your offense has to be 3 or less, your defensive, and your utility has to be 7 or more. Like, they are specifics, they have to be their numbers or this build won't work. And thinking about it, now we're running down here, there was another talent I was going for on... Was it? I don't think it was the kneepads. I think it might have been the holster just before I put on the gear set ones. I was going for a talent. I'm not sure if it's swapping weapons. Like, I think it's getting a kill then swapping weapons gives you 25% damage for 10 seconds. So there's even more damage you can whack onto your gun. So just work with the build. Increase it. Like, remember, gear score doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're a 465 or a 528,000. It literally doesn't matter with gear score. It's just about the build in general. So the named boss is in front of us. I'm going to start off with a... Actually, I'm not going to use a grenade. I'm going to go with a seeker mine. And then I'm going to pop down the self-healing. So double tap the assigned button to self-heal. Put that away. And you'll see that, like, luckily enough, when you use the... Oh, you can see the damage already. Oh, sit down. Get out of my game. But luckily enough with the chem launcher, because it never used to work how it does now, you used to have to shoot all 3 or whatever your ammo count was to get the thing to go on cooldown. Like, for it to count as being on cooldown. But now, even when you use 1 charge, it's classed as being on cooldown. That's why it's so good to use. Not only that, it gives you healing and it comes back very quick. It's got like a 20-second cooldown. It's mad. I'm just waiting for this guy to peek again. Unless we can get some hits on one of these. Right, I'm going to charge this guy down. Oh, got some tech. I don't know who you're trying to flank. You can just see we went from a 48,000 headshot to a 53,000. Like, it's stupid how much damage it deals. I love it. Although one thing I haven't quite tested yet is heroic. I've not been on heroic with this just yet. I will do. We're going to cluster seeker mine you. And in case you don't die, I'm going to get that to go on cooldown. And then there was a 52,000 headshot. Quickly go grab our electronics. We need those for all the recalibrating and stuff we have to do. And that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you've used this build, or even if you haven't, let me know what damage numbers you get with an AR in the comments. Also, if you have used this build or you're going to, let me know the damage you get with a single shot rifle. I want to see if anyone's actually broken 100k damage with a headshot with an AR, because I'm getting very close. Obviously there's more optimizing I need to do to actually get to that point, and even though it's the final bullets of the mag, it's still crazy to deal that much damage. I think this is going to completely melt enemies in Heroic, but that's something I need to test myself. But for now, that's going to do it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching.